The crystal glasses clink like tiny bells around the table. Laughter fills my mother's dining room, the kind that sounds warm but feels hollow. I watch my brother Trent raise his champagne, his smile sharp as broken glass. His eyes find mine across the long oak table Dad built with his own hands 30 years ago. To Dad, Trent says, his voice carrying that rehearsed confidence I've learned to hate. And to his faith in me, his trust that I'd handle what he left behind the right way. The guests applaud. Aunt Brenda dabs her eyes. Uncle Marcus nods like Trent just said something profound. My throat tightens as I lift my own glass, the champagne suddenly tasting like battery acid. Then Trent adds, almost as an afterthought, guess Dad knew Aaron wouldn't know what to do with that kind of responsibility. More laughter, the kind that cuts. My mother looks down at her plate, pushing around roasted carrots she won't eat. My stomach drops like I've just missed the last step on a staircase in the dark. The room tilts slightly, and I have to grip the edge of the table to steady myself. That's when it hits me. What he's actually saying. What everyone in this room already knows. My inheritance. The land Dad promised me while I held his hand through chemo. The accounts he swore would take care of me. The house where I spent 3 years sleeping on a couch so I could hear if he needed help in the night. Gone. My brother stole it. And he just announced it like a trophy he won fair and square. The room keeps buzzing with conversation, but I can't hear the words anymore. Just a dull roar like I'm underwater. My chest feels tight like someone's sitting on it. I set down my glass carefully, afraid if I move too fast, I'll shatter into pieces right here at the dinner table. What did you just say? My voice comes out quieter than I meant. Nobody hears me except Trent. He shrugs, that smug grin never leaving his face. He's wearing a new suit, dark gray with thin pinstripes. Italian, probably. The kind Dad would have called wasteful. Dad's estate. Trent says casually, like we're discussing the weather. It's all handled now. Guess he trusted the right son to manage things properly. Something inside me fractures. Not breaks, just cracks like ice on a lake in early spring. I look around the table at the faces I've known my whole life. My mother, picking at her food. Uncle Marcus, refilling his wine glass. Aunt Brenda, laughing at something Trent's wife whispered. Mr. Peterson, Dad's lawyer, studying his plate like it holds the secrets of the universe. The people who should defend me. The people who watched me give up 3 years of my life to care for Dad. Who saw me quit my job, move back home, learn to give injections and change bedpans, and hold my father while he cried in pain at 3 in the morning. They're all silent now. And somehow, their silence feels like a verdict. Guilty of being too trusting. Guilty of believing blood meant something. Guilty of thinking promises mattered. I sit there frozen while the dinner continues around me. Trent's laugh echoes in my head, mixing with the clink of silverware on china. My hands are shaking, so I put them in my lap where nobody can see. My brother stole my inheritance and bragged about it at dinner. The thought loops in my mind like a broken record. Each time it comes around, it hits harder. Dad's land, the 20 acres where he taught me to fish and build tree forts. The investment accounts he'd been growing since before I was born. The house with the workshop in the back, where he spent weekends building furniture that would outlast him. The truck he promised me, the one we rebuilt together the summer I turned 16. All of it, gone to Trent, the brother who showed up twice during Dad's final year. Once for Christmas, which he spent on his phone taking work calls. Once for Dad's birthday, where he stayed for 2 hours and spent most of that time talking about his latest business deal. But I have something Trent doesn't know about. My phone, sitting in my jacket pocket, has been recording since before dinner started. I turn it on out of habit, some instinct I didn't understand at the time. Now I understand perfectly. His voice is on there. Every smug word. Every laugh at my expense. And I'm going to use it. My name is Aaron Caldwell. I'm 29 years old. And until 6 months ago, I thought I understood how the world worked. I thought family meant something. I thought doing the right thing mattered. I spent 3 years taking care of our dying father while Trent chased business deals in 3 different states. 3 years of watching Dad shrink from a man who could split firewood with one swing to someone who needed help getting to the bathroom. 3 years of learning medical terms I never wanted to know, of insurance battles and prescription schedules and physical therapy appointments. Dad, made me promises during those years. Late at night, when the pain medication wore off and he couldn't sleep, he'd hold my hand and say, "You took care of me, son. You'll never want for anything. I'm making sure of that." He said it like a prayer, like a covenant. I believed him because he'd never lied to me before, because he was my father, and fathers don't abandon their sons, even from beyond the grave. But I guess promises die faster than people. Because 2 weeks after we buried Dad under the oak tree in the old cemetery, Trent showed up with papers that said otherwise. Papers that said Dad changed his mind. Papers that made Trent executor and primary beneficiary of an estate that was supposed to be split evenly between us. Papers that, I would learn, were completely fake. 2 weeks after Dad's funeral, I was still living in the family house. I hadn't cleaned out Dad's room yet. Couldn't bring myself to pack away his clothes or give away his books. The house still smelled like him, like Old Spice and wood smoke and the cherry tobacco he'd smoked in his pipe on the back porch. Trent showed up on a Tuesday morning in a new suit that probably cost more than my monthly rent used to. He had papers in his hand and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "We need to talk about Dad's estate," he said, walking past me into the kitchen like he owned the place, which apparently he thought he did. Mr. Peterson, the family lawyer, was with him. That should have been my first warning. Dad's lawyer was in my house with my brother, and nobody had called me. They sat at the kitchen table, spreading documents across the worn wood surface. Trent's smile got wider. Mr. Peterson wouldn't look at me. "The will's been revised," Trent said, sliding a folder toward me. "Dad made some changes in his final months. Everything's been transferred in the spirit of family trust." I opened the folder with hands that had started shaking again. The legal language was dense, hard to parse, but certain words jumped out. Executor, primary beneficiary, asset transfer, Trent's signature at the bottom of every page. Not Dad's signature. Not really. I'd seen Dad's signature 1,000 times. This one was close, but something was off. The way the C in Caldwell curved. The angle of the D in Dad's first name, Duncan. "This isn't right," I said. Trent's smile never wavered. "It's legal and binding." Dad wanted someone who could handle the responsibility. Mr. Peterson finally met my eyes. "I'm sorry, Aaron. Your father was very clear about his wishes. But Dad's wishes were clear to me too. And they didn't sound anything like this." I moved out of the family home 3 days later with 2 cardboard boxes and Dad's old photograph, the one of him and Mom on their wedding day. Mom took the picture when she moved to Aunt Brenda's place. So the house had too many memories. But I think she just couldn't look me in the eye anymore. She didn't hug me when I left. Just stood on the porch, arms crossed, watching me load my truck. The old truck, not Dad's good one. Trent had already claimed that. "You'll land on your feet," she said. Not, "I'm sorry this happened." Not, "I'll fight for you." Just a generic statement that could mean anything or nothing. I crashed in my friend Kyle's spare room, the one he used for storage. We moved boxes of Christmas decorations and old textbooks to make space for a mattress on the floor. Kyle didn't ask for rent, just said, "Stay as long as you need, man." The grief and humiliation mixed together until I stopped feeling anything at all. I wake up and forget for about 5 seconds that Dad was gone and everything was different. Then it would hit me again, fresh and sharp, like stepping on broken glass in the dark. I stopped answering Trent's calls, stopped going to family events. Aunt Brenda texted a few times, but I couldn't respond without saying things I'd regret, or things I wouldn't regret, which was somehow worse. At night, alone in Kyle's spare room, I'd pull out the copy of Dad's real will, the one he'd shown me a year before he died, the one that split everything 50-50. And I'd wonder how Trent had made it disappear. Trent started hosting what he called family brunches. Every other Sunday, posted all over social media, pictures of the house I grew up in with new furniture and fresh paint. Mom sitting at the head of the table, smiling in that tight way that meant she was pretending everything was fine. He'd post pictures of Dad's workshop, now converted to a home gym. The fishing pond, where he'd installed a deck with expensive outdoor furniture. The truck, which he'd had professionally detailed and never drove. Each post felt like a knife. Each comment from relatives praising his stewardship of the family legacy twisted that knife a little deeper. He started calling me little brother in a way that sounded like loser. The few times we crossed paths, at Aunt Brenda's birthday or Uncle Marcus's retirement party, he clapped me on the shoulder and asked how the job search was going. Never mind that I'd found work as a warehouse supervisor, decent pay, honest work. To Trent, if you weren't wearing a suit and closing deals, you weren't really working. Kyle noticed me getting quieter, more withdrawn. You should talk to a lawyer, he said one night over Chinese takeout. There's got to be something you can do. But lawyers cost money I didn't have. And Trent had Dad's entire estate to fund his defense. I was one guy with a gut feeling that something was wrong and no way to prove it. So I stayed quiet, watched, waited, let Trent think he'd won. The breaking point came at Thanksgiving. I told myself I wasn't going to family dinner, but Mom called and her voice had that fragile quality that meant she was barely holding it together. So I went. Big mistake. Trent was in rare form, holding court at Dad's old table, talking about his plans to sell off parcels of the land for development. Luxury homes, he said. A golf course maybe. Dad would have wanted the land to be profitable, he announced, like Dad hadn't spent 40 years refusing developer offers because he wanted to keep the land wild. Then Trent mentioned the truck. Dad's truck, the blue Ford we'd rebuilt together. I'm thinking of selling it, he said casually, cutting into his turkey. It's just sitting there. Someone should get some use out of it. He promised me that truck. Dad had promised me that truck. It was mine in every way that mattered except legally. Something snapped. I stood up so fast my chair tipped backward and hit the floor with a crash that made everyone jump. The dining room went silent. Even the football game on TV in the next room seemed to pause. You think you won? My voice came out steady cold. I barely recognized it. Trent looked up at me, fork still in his hand, that insufferable smile spreading across his face. I don't think it, little brother. I know it. I walked out, didn't grab my coat, didn't say goodbye to Mom or Aunt Brenda. Just walked straight through the front door and kept walking until I reached my truck 3 blocks away, where I'd had to park because Trent's car and his wife's car and Uncle Marcus's car took up the driveway. That night, sitting in Kyle's spare room, I started planning. Really planning. Not just angry fantasies, but actual concrete steps. Because Trent was right about one thing. This was war. And I was done losing. Dad's old accountant, Mr. Lowell, called me 2 days after Thanksgiving. I almost didn't answer because I didn't recognize the number. But something made me pick up. Aaron, he said, his voice careful. I saw some of your brother's social media posts about the estate. Some of those numbers don't add up. We met at a diner off the highway, the kind with checked tablecloths and coffee in heavy ceramic mugs. Mr. Lowell was 70-something, with white hair and glasses that kept sliding down his nose. He'd done Dad's taxes for 30 years. He spread papers across the table, pointing with a pen that had teeth marks on the cap. These transfers, he said, they happened before your father passed. Large amounts moving from the family trust into an account in Trent's name alone. My coffee went cold as he explained. Trent had started moving money 8 months before Dad died. Small amounts at first, then larger. He'd used a power of attorney that Dad had signed when he first got sick, meant for medical decisions and bill paying. The final addendum to the will, Mr. Lowell continued, the one that supposedly gives Trent everything. The signature looks wrong to me. I've seen your father's signature hundreds of times. He showed me. The date was 3 days before Dad died, when Dad could barely hold a pen. When I was the only one in the house with him, because Trent was in Phoenix on a business trip. This is fraud, I said. Mr. Lowell nodded slowly. That's what I'm thinking, but proving it is another matter. You'll need evidence, original documents, expert analysis. Will you help me? He finished his coffee and signaled the waitress for a refill. Your father was a good man. He deserves better than this. That wasn't exactly a yes, but it wasn't a no. It was enough. I could have gone to the police right then, shown them what Mr. Lowell found, filed charges, but something stopped me. Trent loved attention. He lived for the spotlight, for being the successful brother, the responsible son, the man everyone could count on. His entire identity was built on other people's admiration. If I reported him to the police, he'd hire expensive lawyers and drag it out for years. He'd spin it as a misunderstanding, a paperwork error. He'd make himself the victim of a jealous brother's accusations. And maybe, just maybe, he'd find a way to make it all go away. No, I wanted something better than punishment. I wanted exposure. I wanted Trent to fall for grace in front of everyone he'd been performing for. I wanted his carefully constructed image to crumble while people watched. I wanted him to feel what I felt that day at dinner when he announced he'd taken everything and everyone stayed silent. So I started planning differently. Not for a criminal case, but for a public reckoning. Mr. Lowell didn't know about this part. Neither did Kyle. This was something I had to do alone, because Trent had taught me something important over the past 6 months. He taught me that the people who hurt you most are the ones who think you're too weak to fight back. He was about to learn he was wrong. Over the next 4 months, I collected evidence like I was building a house. Foundation first, then walls, then roof. Everything documented, everything dated, everything checked twice. Mr. Lowell's niece, who worked at the bank, found records showing Trent had liquidated assets from the family trust before the will was even read. That meant he knew exactly what he was doing, had planned it while Dad was still alive. I hired a document examiner, paying with money I'd saved for my warehouse job. She confirmed what Mr. Lowell suspected. Dad's signature on the final addendum was forged. Someone had scanned an old signature and pasted it onto the new document. The pen pressure was wrong. The line weight was inconsistent. I tracked down the notary whose stamp appeared on the paperwork. She had no record of notarizing anything for Duncan Caldwell in the months before his death. In fact, she'd never met Dad, never been to our house. Her stamp had been forged too, copied from legitimate documents she'd notarized for Trent's business years earlier. Each piece of evidence was a stone. I was building a mountain that Trent would fall from, and I was making sure it was tall enough that the fall would be spectacular. Kyle noticed me staying up late, papers spread across his kitchen table. "What are you working on?" he asked. "A project," I said. Something Dad would have wanted me to finish. That wasn't a lie. Dad always said if something was worth doing, it was worth doing right. He built his furniture to last generations. I was building a case the same way. In March, 6 months after Dad's death, Trent launched a new business venture. He called it Caldwell Legacy Holdings. The name made me want to put my fist through a wall. He held a launch party at an expensive hotel downtown, gave interviews to the local business journal about entrepreneurship and family values, posted photos on social media with captions about honoring my father's memory by building something that will last. Every word was poison. Every photo felt like a slap, but I kept my face neutral. I liked the posts, left encouraging comments, congratulated him publicly while privately adding each statement to my file. Because every public claim about Dad's values was another rope I'd use later. Every interview where he talked about stewardship and responsibility was more proof of what he'd actually done. Trent held a press conference announcing a partnership with a real estate developer. They were going to turn part of Dad's land into luxury homes, he said. Making the land work for the family is how he phrased it. Never mind that Dad had rejected that same developer 5 times while he was alive. I watched the press conference video 3 times. Saved it to my hard drive. Added it to the folder. Kyle walked in while I was watching, saw Trent's face on my laptop screen. "Man, you've got to let this go. It's eating you alive." But Kyle didn't understand. This wasn't about anger anymore. This was about justice. About making sure Dad's real wishes were honored. About showing Trent that being clever wasn't the same as being smart. And I was very, very smart. I disappeared from social media in April. Deleted my accounts. Stopped responding to family messages. Let my phone go straight to voicemail for everyone except Kyle and Mr. Lowell. People assumed I'd given up. Mom told Aunt Brenda I was going through something and needed space. Trent probably thought I'd finally accepted reality and moved on with my life. But I hadn't moved on. I'd moved to a small town 2 hours north, rented a tiny apartment above a hardware store, and spent every free minute organizing my evidence. Mr. Lowell drove up twice to review documents. The document examiner sent her official report. The bank records arrived via secure email. Everything was falling into place. Dad used to say something when I was a kid, frustrated because I couldn't solve a problem fast enough. He'd put his hand on my shoulder and say, "Aaron, you can't fight wolves with rage. You fight them with silence, with patience. You let them think they've won until the moment you show them they've lost." I was being patient. I was being silent. And Trent had no idea what was coming. At night, alone in my apartment, I'd practice what I'd say, how I'd present the evidence, the order of revelations. I rehearsed it like an actor preparing for the role of a lifetime, because in a way, that's exactly what it was. This was my final performance in the theater of family dysfunction, and I was going to make it count. In May, Mr. Lowell's niece called me directly for the first time. Her name was Rebecca, and she sounded nervous when she said she'd found something else. We met at the same highway diner. She slid a manila envelope across the table, looking over her shoulder like we were in a spy movie. Trent liquidated the family trust 3 days before your father died, she said quietly. Moved almost everything into a personal account. The timing means he knew your father wouldn't survive the week. The air left my lungs. It's one thing to forge signatures after someone dies. It's another thing entirely to steal from them while they're dying, knowing they're too weak to stop you. How did you get this? I asked. I shouldn't have these records, Rebecca admitted. But your dad was kind to my uncle. He deserves better than this. She explained that Trent had used his power of attorney to authorize the transfers. Claimed it was for estate planning purposes. But the documents showed the money went into accounts only Trent could access, not family trusts or joint accounts. He planned this for months, Rebecca said. While you were taking care of your father, your brother was positioning himself to take everything. I thanked her, paid for her lunch, added the new evidence to my growing file. That night, I allowed myself to feel the rage I'd been keeping controlled. Punched Kyle's spare pillow until my knuckles hurt. Cried for the first time since Dad's funeral. Then I washed my face, made coffee, and got back to work. Because rage was useful, but only if you channeled it into something productive. The recording from that first dinner was still on my phone. I transferred it to my computer, backed it up in 3 different places. I'd listened to it so many times I had Trent's words memorized. His voice, smug and clear. Guess Dad trusted me more. Maybe Aaron's not built for responsibility. The laughter that followed. The silence from Mom and Uncle Marcus and Aunt Brenda. Mr. Peterson clearing his throat uncomfortably. Then later, when Trent thought I'd left the room, but I just stepped into the hallway, his phone conversation with someone. Probably his wife, though I couldn't hear the other side. You think Aaron will ever figure out I faked the signature? Please. He's too soft, too trusting. Dad's Boy Scout son isn't going to do anything about it. That part was pure gold. An admission of fraud, recorded accidentally because Trent was too arrogant to check if I was really gone. I'd spend hours making sure the audio was clear, cleaned up the background noise, made sure every word was audible. This recording would be the opening act of my revenge. The proof that Trent wasn't just a thief, but a proud one. Kyle walked in while I was listening to it again. Is that your brother? Yeah. What are you going to do with that? I looked at him. Something Dad would approve of. Aaron, man, I'm worried about you. Don't be, I said. I'm fine. Better than fine. I'm focused. And I was. For the first time in months, I knew exactly what I was doing and why. 16. In early June, I sent out invitations. Not emails or texts. Actual paper invitations printed on nice cardstock. The kind Mom used to send for family gatherings. Family dinner. Reconciliation gathering, the front read. Inside, let's put the past behind us and move forward as the family Dad would have wanted us to be. I sent them to everyone. Mom, Trent, Aunt Brenda, Uncle Marcus, even Mr. Peterson. 14 people total, all the ones who'd been at that first dinner where Trent announced his theft. The responses came quickly. Everyone was shocked I'd reached out. Mom called, her voice shaky with hope. Oh, Aaron, I'm so glad you're ready to move past this. Aunt Brenda texted, your father would be so happy to see you boys reconciling. Trent's response came last. Just a text with a smirking emoji. Looking forward to it, little brother. Perfect. He thought I'd given up. Thought I was waving the white flag. Coming back to the family fold with my tail between my legs. Kyle helped me prepare for the dinner. We rented a private room at a nice restaurant, the kind with white tablecloths and waiters who knew which fork to use for salad. I wanted everything to be perfect. Wanted the setting to match the occasion. Are you sure about this? Kyle asked while we were setting up. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. Above the head of the table, Kyle helped me install a small camera, the kind used for security systems, hidden in the decorative light fixture, recording everything. This time, I wasn't relying on my phone in my pocket. This time, everyone would see the truth in high definition. The night of the dinner, I arrived early. Wore a nice suit, got a haircut, looked like I'd finally pulled myself together. When Trent walked in, I met him at the door. I hugged him. Actually hugged my brother, the man who'd stolen everything from me. Water under the bridge, I said, clapping him on the back. He laughed, surprised but pleased. Didn't know you had it in you to forgive, Aaron. Neither did I said, smiling. But Dad wouldn't have wanted us fighting. He'd have wanted us to be a family. Trent's eyes got a little misty. For a second, I almost felt bad. Almost. Then I remembered Dad's face when he made me promise to take care of the land. Remember the nights I sat with him while he cried from pain. Remember Trent's text messages during that time. Can't make it this weekend, got a client dinner. The guilt evaporated. I smiled wider. Mom hugged me, crying. I knew you'd come around, she whispered. I knew my boys would figure it out. Aunt Brenda looked relieved. Uncle Marcus shook my hand firmly. Mr. Peterson seemed uncomfortable, but he came. And above us all, the camera blinked its tiny red light, recording everything. Every smile, every hug, every word, building the context for what was about to come. The food came in courses. Salad first, then soup, then the main course. The conversation flowed easily. Trent was in his element, telling stories about his business, talking about his plans for the company. I'm expanding into commercial real estate, he announced. The Caldwell name is becoming synonymous with quality development in this region. Mom beamed at him. Your father would be so proud. I almost laughed. Dad would have been horrified. He'd hated developers, called them locusts in suits. But nobody at this table seemed to remember that except me. Trent talked about renovating the family house, showed photos on his phone. New kitchen, new bathrooms, that home gym in Dad's workshop. I'm honoring Dad's legacy by maintaining the property, he said. That's wonderful, Aunt Brenda said. Duncan would appreciate you taking such good care of his home. I nodded along, smiled at the right times, asked questions that made me seem genuinely interested. Played my part perfectly, because I learned something from Trent over these months. I'd learned that the best performances require patience, that the bigger the build-up, the more devastating the fall. And Trent was about to fall very, very far. Dessert came. Coffee. The waiters cleared the plates. Uncle Marcus started to make a speech about family and healing. I let him finish, then I stood up slowly. Before we end this evening, I said, my voice calm and clear, there's something I need to share with everyone. I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out my phone, set on the table gently, like it was something precious, which in a way it was. I want to play something for you all, I said. Something from that dinner 6 months ago, right after Dad's funeral. Trent's smile faltered. Just a little, just for a second. But I caught it. I pressed play. The room filled with Trent's voice, crystal clear despite the background noise. To Dad, and to his faith in me, his trust that I'd handle what he left behind the right way. Mom frowned, confused. Why was I playing this? Then the second part. Guess Dad knew Aaron wouldn't know what to do with that kind of responsibility. The laughter. The awful, cutting laughter. Mom's face went pale. She remembered now. Turn that off, Trent said quietly. His jaw was clenched. I didn't turn it off. I let it play. Let everyone hear the jokes he made. The way people laughed. The silence that followed when I asked what he meant. Then I pressed another button. Played the second recording, the one from later that night. You think Aaron will ever figure out I faked the signature? Please. He's too soft. The room went dead silent. You could have heard a pin drop on the carpet. Mom's coffee cup clattered against her saucer. Aunt Brenda's mouth fell open. Trent stood up fast, his chair scraping backward. Where did you get that? That's out of context. Is it? I asked calmly, because it sounds pretty clear to me. Mr. Lowell, who'd been sitting quietly at the end of the table, reached into his briefcase and pulled out a thick folder, slid it across the table toward Trent. Funny thing, Mr. Lowell said, his voice gentle but firm. I've been reviewing the estate documents, and I found some irregularities. Documents spilled across the white tablecloth. The forged will with Dad's fake signature. The bank records showing transfers before Dad died. The notary's statement that she'd never notarized anything for Duncan Caldwell. The document examiner's report with highlighted sections and technical analysis. Mr. Lowell laid it out piece by piece, explaining each document in language everyone could understand. Aunt Brenda put her hand over her mouth. Uncle Marcus's face turned red. Mom started crying, but this time they weren't tears of joy. The signature analysis shows clear evidence of forgery, Mr. Lowell said, pointing to a comparison chart. These transfers happened while Duncan was hospitalized, and this notary stamp was copied from unrelated documents. Trent tried to grab the papers, but I caught his wrist, gently but firmly. No, I said quietly. They need to see. They need to know what you did. This is insane, Trent said, his voice rising. These documents they're falsified. He's trying to frame me because he's jealous. Am I? I pulled out more papers. These are from the bank. Your signatures authorizing liquidation of the family trust 3 days before Dad died, while I was at the hospital with him, while he was unconscious. You cleaned out his accounts, knowing he'd never wake up to stop you. Mom made a sound like a wounded animal. Trent, tell me this isn't true. Trent looked at her, his mouth opening and closing. No words came out. For the first time in his life, my eloquent brother had nothing to say. You stole from your own family, I said, my voice steady despite the rage burning in my chest. You stole from your dying father. And you bragged about it, because you thought I was too weak to fight back. Dad wanted me to handle things. He trusted me more. Dad trusted you. I agreed. And you betrayed that trust. You forged his signature. You stole his money. You turned his legacy into your own personal bank account. I looked around the table at the faces I'd known my whole life. You all heard him at that first dinner. You heard him mock me. You heard him brag. And nobody said a word. Nobody stood up for me. For Dad. For what was right. Aunt Brenda was crying now, too. Uncle Marcus looked like he might be sick. Mr. Peterson had gone completely pale. I'm not doing this for revenge, I continued. I'm doing this because Dad deserves the truth. Because his real wishes should be honored. Because family means something more than just blood. I turned back to Trent. You didn't beat me. You beat yourself. Every lie you told, every document you forged, every smug post on social media. You built your own prison. I just helped you see the bars. The fallout happened fast. Mr. Peterson excused himself immediately, said he needed to consult with his partners about potential liability. Uncle Marcus called a lawyer he knew. Aunt Brenda couldn't stop apologizing through her tears. Mom sat frozen, staring at the documents spread across the table. I don't understand, she kept saying. I don't understand how this happened. I'll explain it to you, I said gently. But not here. Not now. Trent tried to leave, but Uncle Marcus blocked the door. You're not going anywhere until we figure this out. I don't have to listen to this, Trent said, but his voice had lost its confidence. He sounded scared. Small. Actually, you do, Mr. Lowell said. Because these documents are going to the district attorney's office tomorrow morning, along with sworn statements from the bank staff, the notary, and the document examiner. You committed fraud, Trent. Multiple counts. This isn't a family disagreement anymore. This is criminal. Trent's wife, who'd been silent throughout the whole dinner, stood up suddenly. I didn't know, she said, looking at me. I swear, I didn't know about any of this. I believed her. She looked as shocked as everyone else. The dinner broke up in chaos. People leaving in clusters, whispering, some crying. Trent tried to talk to Mom, but she wouldn't look at him, just gathered her purse and her coat and let Aunt Brenda lead her out. Cole had been waiting outside. He came in when everyone else left, looked at the mess of papers on the table, the abandoned coffee cups, the half-eaten desserts. How'd it go? He asked. I sat down heavily in my chair, suddenly exhausted. Exactly like I planned. You okay? I thought about that. Was I okay? I just destroyed my brother's life in front of our entire family. Exposed him as a liar and a thief. Set in motion criminal charges that would probably send him to prison. Yeah, I said finally. I'm okay. Better than okay. I'm free. Because that's what this felt like. Not victory, exactly. Not triumph. Just freedom. The weight I'd been carrying for 6 months, the anger and betrayal and grief had finally lifted. "Dad would be proud of you," Kyle said quietly. I picked up the photo I'd brought with me, the one of Dad on his wedding day. Young and strong and full of hope for the future. "I hope so," I whispered. "I really hope so." The next week moved like a slow-motion car crash. Mr. Lowell filed a formal complaint with the district attorney. The estate was frozen pending investigation. Trent's company, Caldwell Legacy Holdings, lost 2 major investors when news of the fraud allegations broke. The local paper ran a story, "Local businessman under investigation for estate fraud." They didn't name Trent directly, but everyone in town knew who they meant. Trent called me once. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. "Aaron." His voice was rough, like he'd been crying or screaming. "Maybe both. We can fix this. We can work something out." "There's nothing to fix," I said calmly. "You committed crimes. Now you face consequences. I'm your brother. You were my brother. Now you're just someone who stole from our father." He tried to argue, to explain, to make excuses. I listened for exactly 1 minute, then hung up, blocked his number. I didn't need to hear anymore. The district attorney's office moved faster than I expected. Within 2 weeks, they'd filed formal charges. Forgery, fraud, elder abuse, because Dad was dying when Trent started moving money. Each charge carried potential prison time. Trent hired an expensive lawyer, but Mr. Lowell said it wouldn't matter. The evidence was too strong, too clear. The document examiner's report alone was damning. Add in the bank records and the notary's statement, and there was no defense that would hold up. Mom finally called me 3 weeks after the dinner. Her voice was small, broken. "I'm sorry, Aaron. I should have listened to you. I should have questioned things." "Yeah," I said. "You should have. Can you forgive me?" I thought about that. Could I? She'd chosen comfort over truth. Chosen to believe Trent's lies because they were easier than confronting reality. "Eventually," I said, "but not yet. I need time." She understood. Or at least, she said she did. 2 months after the dinner, I got a call from a new lawyer. Not Mr. Peterson, who'd resigned from the case. This was a woman named Ms. Torres, who specialized in estate litigation. "The probate court has ruled in your favor," she said. "The forged will has been invalidated. Your father's original will is being honored. The assets were being restored to the rightful heirs. The house, the land, the accounts. Dad's truck. Everything split 50-50, just like Dad intended." "What about Trent's charges?" I asked. "Trial's set for January. But between you and me, his lawyer's pushing for a plea deal. The evidence is overwhelming." I thanked her and hung up. Sat in silence for a long time, processing what this meant. I could go back to the house now. Could walk through rooms that smelled like Dad. Could sit in his workshop, touch his tools, remember the good times before cancer and betrayal. Kyle drove me out there on a Saturday morning. Fall was turning to winter, the trees bare against a gray sky. The house looked different somehow. Smaller, less imposing. I walked up the porch steps slowly. The key Mom had given me turned smoothly in the lock. Inside, everything was as Trent had left it. His renovations, his furniture, his attempt to erase Dad and replace him with something more modern. But in the workshop, converted back to its original purpose by court order, I found Dad's old workbench. His tools, organized exactly how he'd left them. And sitting on the bench, almost like someone had placed it there deliberately, was Dad's watch. The one he wore every day. The one I thought Trent had taken. I picked it up with shaking hands. The leather band was worn soft. The face was scratched from years of work, but still ran, the second hand sweeping smoothly around the dial. On the back, an engraving I'd forgotten about. "To Duncan, with love. Build something that lasts." Mom's wedding gift to him 40 years ago. I wore Dad's watch to Trent's sentencing hearing in January. The courtroom was cold, formal, nothing like our messy family dinners. Trent sat at the defense table in an orange jumpsuit. He'd been denied bail after trying to access hidden accounts and flee to Mexico. That hadn't helped his case. The judge was a woman in her 60s with sharp eyes and no patience for excuses. She'd read all the evidence, heard all the arguments. Now she was ready to rule. "Mr. Caldwell," she said, looking directly at Trent, "you betrayed your family's trust. You stole from your dying father. You forged legal documents and committed fraud on a massive scale. And you did it all while pretending to honor your father's memory. Trent's lawyer tried to interject, but the judge held up her hand. I've heard enough. The evidence is clear. The crimes are serious, and your lack of remorse throughout these proceedings has been noted. She sentenced him to 5 years in prison. Not as much as the maximum, but enough. Enough for Trent to understand what he'd lost. Enough for him to sit in a cell and think about the choices he made. As they led him away, he looked at me one last time. I couldn't read his expression. Anger? Regret? Fear? Maybe all three. I looked back steadily, then touched Dad's watch on my wrist. A small gesture, but Trent saw it. His face crumpled. Good. Let him remember. Let him think about that watch every day for the next 5 years. Let him remember what he threw away for money that was never really his. Outside the courthouse, Mom was waiting. She looked older, worn down by months of stress and shame. Thank you, she said quietly, for not giving up, for fighting for what was right. I didn't do it for thanks, I said. I did it for Dad. I know. She hesitated, then hugged me. Your father would be so proud of you, Aaron. So proud. Maybe she was right. I hope she was right. 6 months later, I'm living in the family house. Not in my old room, but in Dad's room, which felt wrong at first, but now feels right. Like I'm taking care of his space the way he'd want. I've started restoring the workshop. Trent's gym equipment is gone, sold off to help pay restitution. Dad's tools are back on the walls. The workbench is clean and organized. I'm learning to use the equipment properly, taking online classes in woodworking. Last week, I finished my first piece. A simple box made from oak with dovetail joints like Dad taught me when I was 12. It's not perfect. The joints are a little loose in places. The finish is uneven, but it's mine. Built with my own hands in my father's workshop. Built to last. Kyle came by yesterday, brought beer and pizza. We sat on the porch, watching the sunset over Dad's land. The land that's mine now, safe from developers. Protected the way Dad wanted. You ever think about Trent? Kyle asked. Sometimes I admitted, but not with anger anymore. Just sadness, I guess, for what he could have been if he'd made different choices. Think you'll ever talk to him again? I took a sip of beer, considering. Maybe. When he gets out. If he's learned anything. But it won't be the same. Can't be. No, Kyle agreed. It can't. We sat in silence for a while, comfortable silence, watching the stars come out one by one. I thought about that first dinner when Trent raised his glass and bragged about stealing my inheritance. How small I'd felt. How powerless. But Dad had taught me something important, even if he never said it directly. He taught me that strength isn't always loud. That justice doesn't always come fast. That sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's just living well. Building things that last. Honoring the people who deserve better. I picked up Dad's photo from the table beside me. Looked at his young face, full of hope and dreams for the future. I didn't have to destroy him, Dad. I whispered. He did that himself. I just made sure everyone could see it. The watch on my wrist ticked steadily. The porch swing creaked gently in the breeze. The land stretched out before me, wild and beautiful and mine to protect. Some revenge doesn't end with anger or triumph. It ends with peace, with justice, with freedom. It ends with coming home.